The older I get, the more concerned I am with what's been going into my lungs for the past 19 years of my fabrication and welding career. But it doesn't have to be that way anymore, especially when you can build something like this for dirt cheap.
Season 5.
This is a downdraft table, sometimes known as a grinding table, other times known as a sanding table, but pretty much the exact same thing. The primary purpose of this is to draw in the air and the particles that leave the piece that you're sanding or grinding on, filter it, and deliver 10,000 years of fresh air, but only if you know the combination to the air shield. Now, a table about this size will set you back somewhere between $1,800 and $2,500, depending on where you buy it from, whose name is slapped across the front of it, claiming to be the manufacturer, or what sort of options it has on it. The list goes on. But if you lack that King Roland size budget, or maybe you don't want to spend that much money on a table, or you're just looking for a really cool DIY project for cheap, well, then you do what I do. You set yourself up a budget or a target. In this case, I want to spend no more than $500 to make this table fully functioning with nothing more than off-the-shelf components from my local hardware store and a little bit of ingenuity. You're going to see me using some pretty fancy tools to get this job done. Let me reassure you, you don't need those fancy tools to do it. Let's just take the paneling. If you don't have, let's say, a CNC plasma cutter like I do to do this job, you can absolutely grab a hold of some power shears, double cuts as they call them, a jigsaw with a sharp metal blade on there, or a pair of tin snips. Pretty much anything stronger than a pair of scissors is needed to cut sheet metal that is 20 gauge. That's the panel size that we're using. As far as bending is concerned, if you don't have a box and pan brake capable enough like I do, you can absolutely grab like a block of wood, bang it over with a hammer. You can definitely use some pieces of metal between two clamps and force it over that way. Pretty much anything that will make or shape the part that you're looking to build will work. All you have to do is come up with something clever and make it all happen. Remember, there's no right or wrong as long as the result is correct. The second thing is CAD. I have to have CAD in order to tell the machine what to cut out. Now, you don't necessarily have to have CAD at all. In fact, I was going to make this cool 3D rendering and spin it around and make it come apart to make the video look cool, but I ended up getting more frustrating because, like many, I already had the design inside of my head, so I could just get to it. I'm starting off with a 24 by 48 inch tabletop. That's the size in general of my table, and I got my height set to about 40 inches because I'm relatively tall. All of this, the steel structure, is going to be made out of 1.5 inch square tubing with an 065 wall. This stuff is cheap, very easy to work with, and let's just get right on it. Now you might have noticed that there was quite a bit of a jump in that montage that was just put together there. To tell you the truth, the worst 2 words in the entire YouTube language dictionary is dead battery. So that's why we got a little bit of a jump as to where we're at right now. But luckily this is just a steel frame design with a few options in it, which we can go over right now. The first one is the back catch. The back catch is built into the frame itself. I've seen a handful of tables out there and they have the catch bolted up to the top of it and it's kind of separate of the table, but it feels like it takes up, well, a lot of unnecessary space. Instead of building a separate catch bolted to the top, I integrated it into the table by extending the length of the rear tubes and offsetting the table top for clearance. So now the sparks and all the junk will fly off the part and go into the tub thanks to this cheap sheet metal panel that I put on the back here. It just deflects it right down into the tub. Now down below is a section for the drawer. The drawer will make cleaning the tub out a bit easier since I won't have to take the slats off the top for regular servicing and cleaning. I just pull the drawer out, empty it, throw it back in. Now I also added locking caster wheels to only one side. The opposite side has some tubes with some foot pads on it. Now why would I only do 2 wheels instead of 4, you might ask? Simple. 2 wheels cost less than 4 wheels, and I only need 2 wheels to move it in and out of the machine room. These legs are from the scrap pile, which cost nothing. Now, on the front of this machine, which you guys can't see right now, is the name and inspiration for this table that I cut out on the fast cut. I'll reveal that later, but that's why this panel is already on here and kind of blocking it. But the big thing you got to pay attention to here, this is already painted, which means my design has already been made up, everything is done, and I have no more welding to do. After this, it's nothing but adding paneling. So it's really important that when you get to a stage like this, you are definitely sure before you lay down the paint and all the rest of that good stuff. So let's get some of these panels together and get moving on. There's a couple of things that we have to consider when we're building something like this. One of those things is the orientation and the order of which the panels need to go in here. That's really important for one primary reason here. This is a cheap, budget-friendly design, but I don't want it to look like a cheap, budget-friendly design. I don't want to see thousands of screws all over this thing. I definitely don't want screw heads visible on the front or on the sides. I mean, on the back panel here, yeah, we're not going to worry about that, but, you know, I want it to look clean. I also don't want to reach my hand down into the tank or the tub and get sliced open by a bunch of screws poking through there or whatever. So we really got to consider how these panels are going to attach. The second thing is serviceability. The filters that I'm using are very large. They're reusable, they're furnace filters, but they, with the size requirements of flow that I need to have with the 2 box fans on each side, it means that the filter has to be a little bit bigger than what can come out of the top by my design. So I'm going to do a removable lower back panel that will allow access to the tub for cleaning and, you know, servicing the filters and all the rest of that good stuff. No big deal there. But the order that I have to put these in here is really important. Now I am just kind of making this up as I go along just because of the fact that I've redesigned this like 3 or 4 times, but you know, I know that with the order that I'm going to do on here and to minimize the amount of screws that I need, which also drives our budget down, there's going to be a lot of overlapping in the panels, and like one single screw will go in there and hold it all together. You'll see all of that come together, but I have the upper panel for the catch on there, I have the front panel on there, or at least just kind of in place. It's not totally secured yet, but the next panel on my list, based on the design that I'm using here, is going to be the floor pans. Then it's going to be the sides with the box fans in it. Then we're going to do the back panel last because that will be the one that's removable and accessible. But you're going to see all that as we go along. First measurement that I need to get here is this lower. I got 16.5 inches going this way, and I've got 21.5 inches going this way. To make sure that all of our panels will overlap and still fit in there, we need to make sure that we have enough overlap on this tube, but to keep it clean again, I want to make sure it doesn't go all the way to the edge here. I got 1.5 inches to work with, so I'm only going to put like 1 inch of overlap on this. Now on this side over here, on the opposite side, which you'll see later, there is that inspirational name for this thing. So I can't drive screws in from the front. Even if I did, I don't want to see them. So this, where it attaches to the front panel here, will break downward. The rest of them will be flat with an overlap, a 1 inch overlap. Over on the side here where it goes down to the drawer, we're also going to do an overlap just to keep it nice and clean and make sure that no trash or anything gets underneath the sheet metal and all the rest of that when we get all together. So with these dimensions in mind, we got 21.5 by 16.5, and we need to make sure that we have 1 inch on each side for overlap. Super simple. Let's just knock that out. 2 of them. first things that we need to consider here. One, the total width of it and the total height of it, okay? So in this case, we have 21.5 inches wide. I purposely made it that width, so that way the box fan will fit snug, nice and neat inside of here, which it actually does. I'll show you here in a second. The height of it, we have 27.5 inches tall. That's the total height of it. Now, which way do we want this panel to face, and how are we going to fasten it? So if you look carefully, everything that's on the inside of here is all close to this edge, and all of the screws that we intend to drive in here are going to go into these rails. Now, I don't want to access or see the screws from the outside. Even though this is a side panel, you might not see it, but at the same time, I rather make sure it's nice and flush with the front of it. So the face of it will be flush with these rails. The inside of it will be where all of the screws will go to fasten this panel on here, as well as through the side of the fan, because we won't be able to access the brake or anything else like that. So when we squeeze the fan in here, this is exactly where it's going to sit. We'll have the grill, which is removable, and now it takes the shape, the sheet metal of the panel actually takes the shape of the inside of this grill. Okay, so laugh all you want, but these are cheap and they're surprisingly quiet. Now, both of these are the width between each one of those tubes. It's almost exact. They left a little bit of room just for the sheet metal and everything else like that to go in there. So my intention here is to basically screw back on this outside piece, this fan guard or whatever, and this will be the whole panel on each side. And then you'll see just this on the reveal. Should be pretty clean, but I got to take it off of here, get some measurements where these screw holes are, the radius of everything on here, and all the rest of that good stuff, which I'll just do really quick. On the back side, I noticed that when I turned these on originally, aside from them being quiet, they didn't seem to have a whole lot of power, a whole lot of suction coming out of them. So I'm going to try and increase that a little bit by reducing this general size. I'm just going to stick to this this round section right here. It's about 18 and a half, 19 inches. I'm just going to cut a hole around there so it should draw more in that area and less around the entire fan. That's going to try to maximize it. I've also doubled the amount of fans that I've got to use here by using two of them, so one on each side. You'll see all of that as I go along, but I got to get all this off of here and let's see how everything measures out. Maybe I feel like I'm getting older here when I say I remember when these things could cut your fingers off. As long as it works, I guess. 21.5 is the total on here. We're going to reduce that size of the opening down to, let's just say, 20 by 20. That should be the size of the opening. I think that's what we'll do there. We'll figure out what radius this is right here, and then we'll go cut all this out. Now the full length of this will be the distance that we have in the table, the full width of it, distance of the table. Break them both inward a little bit, that way we can mount it all. Screws will actually go through the box fan into the framing itself along with the rest of the paneling. That should hide those. Nice clean reveal on the outside. Let's get to it. Okay, I can't resist. That is just so clean. and these fans fit so friggin' sturdy. I gotta see this. I mean, of course they work, right? They're brand new fans, but I thought they'd be a lot louder than that. I'm not shouting over this. They're not very loud at all. That is so cool. Okay, I gotta hurry up and get these other panels on here now. This is way too cool. I want to finish this up. I gotta not get ahead of myself, but yeah, let's get this other panel measured out here. I can't wait. That's 23 and like an eighth, which that's good for clearance, by 45. So let's just cut that out and zap that sucker in there. I gotta see this. This is cool. You know what, hey, sorry if I didn't show all of that. I'm kind of excited here. I really want to see this go together. So, I mean, it's just like any other panel. Nothing special. Holy wow, look at this. This is just clean. So now what we got to do is take these grills off of here, cut some new panels and faces for those, and then install our filters. Now, the filters are important because, well, I mean, it's great that it sucks it all out, but if it blows it back up into your face or around the rest of the shop, well, this whole table and setup is kind of useless. So yeah, let's get those filters in there, and this should be pretty easy to do, a little bit tricky maybe, but I got an idea. Let's get this going. Now our filters are gonna go onto here, and I need to reduce this area to provide more suction from these fans out of there, right? I don't want it to come through all of that area. I just want it to be about the size of where the actual fan itself is. So we're gonna cut a piece of sheet metal to go around here, and it's also gonna have our filters slide in through the back of it. Again, I don't want to have any screws or anything seen from the front. I don't mind if there's some on the back, and I don't really want them on the side either. So whatever we do that's going to go on here is just going to attach to the fan and then kind of wrap around and completely seal it off. So what I need to do is find out the diameter, which that's about an inch away from this box fan. And since the box fan is 21 and like a half inches wide, then we need to subtract an inch from both sides. That's the diameter of the fan that we're gonna cut in from the actual, from inside there. And I'm just gonna make sure it comes out to an inch down here away from this side. So it's gonna be in the center of that 21 and a half inch cutout there. The second thing I did was go out to my brake real quick with a piece of scrap metal. I bent it all the way as far as it can go, maxed out, which when you measure one of these out, it comes out to 135 degrees, right? Now this section right here will mate up there and seal on nice and tight. But instead of trying to sit here and, you know, eyeball where that angle goes or set this up or anything else like that, I'm just, you know, I just took this piece of sheet metal right here at 1.25 inches with the worth of a tab on here. We're gonna set it up. I'm gonna bring it down to the point where it just touches this fan. Now what this is gonna do when we get this piece all bent up is it's gonna protect these, all the electrical and stuff like that, and it's also gonna be a drop for all of the junk or anything else like that to go on there. Just like the back here has that deflection on the back of the catch. This I want to deflect downward. I don't want any, you know, junk just sitting on there. I'd rather just sit on the floor and I could scoop it or, you know, push it into the drawer down there. So what I'm going to do is take a Sharpie at the point right about roughly where it touches or so, and I can see from the side where it's going to wrap around down the metal there. You know, I can just, I mean, it's 20 gauge. Well, I kind of missed. Oh well, doesn't really matter. I just made a mark where it's going to go right in front of there. And if we take a measurement here, we're about 5 3/4 inches or so, which I could get away with about 6-ish. So 21 and a half plus the inch to go underneath the fan or to wrap underneath the fan, or maybe even out like this to give us to the floor to attach to. So 1 inch there, that's 22 and a half plus the, what, 6 inches or so plus another 1.25 inches. That is the total length. Alrighty, time for some filtration. This is about where I want it to go. I'm basically centering this above. Make sure it's like right there centered so it's not too far over this and too far over that, the diameter of our fan here, or access to our fan. Want to keep it nice and snug, tucked up against there. Of course, when the fans start drawing in, they'll keep it kind of pressed and sucked up in there, but the channels or the tracks that I'm going to build for this, I'm going to have some little tabs that keep them pressed up against the actual part itself, and then we'll worry about sealing that off if we need to. We'll see what it's like. So that looks to be about an inch or so up from there, and of course down from there. Take the tape measure real quick just to double check. Yeah, that's about an inch there, about an inch there, and this is roughly 3/4 of an inch thick or so. So we're gonna go 1 inch up, 1 inch out, 1 inch down to cover the face of it. A couple little tabs in there, no big deal. Easy day. There's a couple of things we should consider when it comes to the grinding surface. First and foremost, it's got to be left bare metal. It's a grinding surface. So if you made it out of something like steel that was painted or even powder coated, or if you made it out of galvanized, the minute an abrasive hit that, it could remove it, which means it's going to rust. It's now exposed to the atmosphere. That leaves us with two metals to choose from, aluminum or stainless steel. Now, if you've ever priced out stainless steel, you know you're going to use aluminum. The thinner the aluminum is, the less money it costs. But the offset on that one, the thinner it is, the less strength it has. In this case, I wanted to use something that was strong enough to hold the parts that we have on here to grind, but not so strong or so thick that I can't even work with it, or it exceeds the budget just buying the aluminum itself. Instead, I opted for 16 gauge. This is plenty strong enough to hold the majority of the parts that we have on here because it's not like the size of a car that's going on here. And the ultimate solution here, since we have to have airflow going through it and we have to have holes, I decided to punch out the larger holes with dimple dies, which strengthens up the panel. So with that problem solved, On to what's next. We're not always going to be in the perfect grinding position for the sparks and dust and everything else like that to collect in either the surface or the back catch. What if we're grinding this way and the sparks are shooting that way because that's the only place we can be? Well, we need something to stop that. That's where the guards come into place. They will either deflect it or they will keep everything basically contained in this area, providing that your part fits on the table. But therein lies another problem. What if your part doesn't fit on this tabletop? You got to come up with something that allows it to fit on there. So if you've been keeping up with our budget so far, you know that we're hitting just over 400 bucks to do this entire table. Now, at a bare minimum, everything that we've done so far is all you need. But in my eyes, I see upgrades. Let's see what else that we can put on here. The first upgrade that came to mind is on that tabletop or the grinding surface itself. Now on most tables you'll see a bunch of rubber grommets that go into all of these holes, and those help keep the part in a steady stationary place, basically meaning you can run hands free, grind all you want out of it, and it's not going to slip around. Now I like the idea, and I was originally going to do that until I priced out a bunch of grommets and found out that $200 and some odd was definitely going to exceed my budget. Instead, I grabbed an anti-fatigue mat. This had to be trimmed down to size, but the beauty of this is it's way cheaper than O-rings, and as it sits over the grinding surface, it keeps the chatter down. It mostly absorbs it. That's kind of a nice thing. There is one part of this build that I am not including into this budget. Primary reason is because it offers absolutely zero integral role toward the function of this table, and I cut it out of scrap metal, so it was free anyway. But we encountered a lot of resistance in the beginning of this build, especially while we were building it. A lot of people said that box fans simply won't function on a downdraft table, even though they were working quite well. So I became inspired to name my table. I needed something that the moment you looked at it, you knew exactly what it was going to do. But who could I put on the front of this to make such a point? Mega Made. And just in case that isn't enough, I enlisted the help of my brother and his vape to show you guys how well this table actually functions when you are in and out of proper positioning or realistic positioning when the table is on. And just for some added fun, since I have the room left in my budget, I bought a combination keypad and a relay to switch the table on.